No rain today in the forecast or something? Everybody showed up. Never know, right? Welcome. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate your time. I know that we weren't really completely upfront with what this would be about, so I appreciate you entertaining the idea of coming here to talk about something I think is important for me. I get asked all the time, is it tough being sheriff? And I tell everybody it's no tougher than your job. You know, we make decisions that probably have a bigger impact in a lot of ways on people when you're in law enforcement, but the job itself is a privilege. And I have this privilege because I have an incredible family. My wife back there, who really is the inspiration for why I pursued this office. We have two boys who have tolerated a ton and been pillars. And I'm very thankful that I've had this opportunity, which obviously kind of tips the hand as to where I'm going with this. I have decided that I will not pursue a third term, not because I leave this office in any way, shape, or form disappointed or anything like that. It has all been incredible. It is the greatest privilege and blessing that anyone could ask for, especially in a profession like this. I've worked with consummate professionals. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office is filled with men and women who are good people, deserving of recognition for their sacrifice. I think that there was a cloud over this office for a long time, and I don't want to pretend like I was suddenly that sunshine that came out through the clouds. It was really them. All I had to do was move the cloud out of the way so you guys could see them. But I also recognize, and it's kind of odd because in this office, there was the same leadership for so long. I think some people thought that was the norm, and it's not. In law enforcement, I think that you always have to have the plan to go in and make as much impact as you can in a period of time that is appropriate, and then clear the way for someone else to come in and improve on that. So as I said, I will not be pursuing a third term. And as a matter of fact, I think it would be appropriate for me to depart from the office in January and clear the way so that during the last year of my term going into the election, there aren't distractions. It gives me a chance to pursue some opportunities to serve the public in different ways and to do some things that have that present themselves as incredible options and opportunities. But aside from my family, my wife Veronica, our boys Austin and Paulie, I want to express gratitude to all those who fought so hard to pave their way so that I could be sheriff. This was not an easy task. There was a lot going on in this community, and there was a political powerhouse that dominated in ways that were inappropriate, that used the platform of this office to intimidate and to influence and to just control the landscape to the detriment of the people that we serve. And I've always said there's no greater strength than humility. And if you're going to be a leader and hold a position such as this, you better have humility. And I've tried really hard to be that person, to be a servant leader, and to create opportunities for these men and women to thrive and sacrifice on behalf of the community. And with the hopes that the next generation sees law enforcement through a lens where there's gratitude and appreciation and respect, and that there is an excitement, the idea of maybe it's a profession for you because it represents something greater than self. Now, when we've met, oftentimes, I have to talk about the heavy things in law enforcement. But since this is, the closing act for me, I think it's important to reflect on the accomplishments because I do want you to recognize how different this office is in ways that you probably aren't familiar or aware. And I think it's important to understand that because I think the community needs to understand who we are. So we have a little bit of a PowerPoint, and you might feel that it's tedious, but I hope you'll pay attention to it because it matters. So we'll go through it, and I'll kind of hit the highlights of the things that we've accomplished during my tenure with the idea of servant leadership. First and foremost, as you're all aware, and it's been some time now, but we shut down Tent City. It was ridiculous. It represented all the things that are wrong about incarceration and law enforcement. It was degrading, and it tried to pass this message as though by disrespecting and mistreating inmates that suddenly would change behavior, and that was nonsense. Not only did we shut that down, but we saved tax dollars in doing so. I take pride in the fact that this is a very difficult and dangerous job, and there are dangerous moments that lead to lawsuits or bad decisions that lead to lawsuits, but we worked really hard to reduce the volume of lawsuits and the impact on our taxpayers so that all the dollars were being spent for public safety and not public payouts. In my 6.5 years, and actually really 6 years of a fiscal budget, I have returned over $90 million to the county general fund. That is being a good steward of taxpayer dollars, and I don't think you can lead any organization, especially one that serves the public, if you're not committed to ensure that every taxpayer dollar is spent appropriately and any additional dollars aren't wasted. The one cloud that does still hang over this office, unfortunately, just doesn't want to seem to go away, is the federal court oversight. 2 orders initially with 4 different categories, and in those 4 categories, we were at 100% compliance. In 2 of the 4, 93 and 82% in the other 2, and it's climbing quickly. That hasn't been easy. That has literally depleted a considerable amount of the resources in this office that could and should be dedicated to public safety. And it's not because I say that there wasn't a need for intervention or federal court oversight, but later in this conversation, I'll talk a little bit about the detriment of it and how it has literally hindered our ability to provide public safety for the community at large, for some reasons that I will tell you I feel very strongly in opposition to. But as far as the accomplishment of the men and women who signed on to be in law enforcement and suddenly were forced into compliance, the fact that with all the obstacles, the moving goalposts, and all the issues and challenges with it, that we've accomplished what we have, I think speaks volumes of the men and women of this organization. We got away from the pink underwear because it's ridiculous. I've always said that the safety of our children is the #1 priority in any community. And historically, this office had a lot of cases that weren't properly investigated. So I created an auditing system and put some exceptional people in charge of building out a system where we can in real time pay attention to cases that involve the safety of our children to ensure they're properly investigated. And the growth of that division and the commitment by this organization is unparalleled. I'm proud of that. We started a school safety conference and program that is statewide, that involves people from across the country who've worked with us. We've led the state in that effort, but we've invited everyone to come to the table: administrators, legislators, school officials, law enforcement, everyone who is a stakeholder, so that they can be a part of the process to ensure that our children are safe when they go to school and they can focus on education and not sheltering in place. It just recently, and it's kind of funny because I saw or heard something about a criticism from maybe one of you that made a joke about the fact that the sheriff's office is putting some motors out on the street to keep people safe, and we're under scrutiny by the courts because of the things that happened in the past. More lives are lost on our streets due to traffic fatalities than any other form of loss of life. And absolutely, I'm committed to address that problem and mitigate to ensure that your family can go home safe every day on our roadways. So the 2 vehicles and the 5 motors that we put out there are to remind everybody that the sheriff's office does traffic enforcement, and we do it well, and we're going to hold you accountable because we want to see you go home safe too. The FATE team, the Fugitive Apprehension Tactical Enforcement team that I started just shortly after taking this office, is approaching 1,000 arrests of the most dangerous people in our communities. Those with warrants wanted for murder, sexual assaults, robberies, all those who pose the greatest threat to the safety of our community is where their focus has been, and they do it seamlessly, quietly, professionally, and effectively. And during this time frame, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, along with some of our partners, have seized nearly $90 million in illegal drugs. You may not remember, but early in my tenure, there was a shootout on the freeway involving 2 fully automatic machine guns that turned out to be formerly the property of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. We had to do an audit to identify all the weapons that had gone missing in the past that were never properly recorded, never documented, never put in the system to show they were even stolen. And the number was considerable. So we created another auditing system so that every year, every firearm in this organization has to be documented and photographed and recorded to ensure that it doesn't go missing and into the hands of a criminal in the street who could harm the safety of our families. And something I'm really proud of is we've seen more protests and civil disturbances in the last 4 or 5 years than maybe since the 60s. And this office handled them flawlessly, worked long hours with short staff, and made sure that we respected the civil rights and the the First Amendment of everyone, and even the Second Amendment in circumstances where people showed up armed while protecting people and protecting democracy and ensuring that volunteers and employees of the county recorder's office could go in and play a part in an election and count votes without fearing for their safety, sending a message across the nation who we are in Arizona when it comes to suddenly being a pivotal state in federal elections. And now we are seen as the experts across the nation. I just came back from from New Mexico. I was in California also, teaching others on how we addressed that problem and mitigated it. One of the things actually that one of my employees brought to me today when we were talking, he said, "Thank you, Sheriff, because historically we may have had relationships with other law enforcement agencies, but leadership didn't." And I feel now that other leaders throughout the county and other police agencies feel good about the relationship they have with the sheriff's office, and that's due to the effort by leadership here and just having respect for the job that others do in their jurisdictions and making sure that we're not imposing our will in that space. And that's critical for us all to stay safe. We have to have a cohesive law enforcement community so that we can work collectively for the greater good. This is kind of a fun one, and actually I wasn't much of a cowboy before I became sheriff, but I like to throw a hat on once in a while and get on a horse. One of our incredible leaders in the organization came to me a while ago and said, "Sheriff, we're down to like 1 or 2 horses, and it's a little bit expensive, so we might need to get rid of the mounted patrol." And I said, "That's not happening because the mounted patrol represents this history of the sheriff's office, so let's go back out there and get some more horses and make sure that we're doing some positive things." So they're used for public safety, they're used for crowd control, but they're also used in parades and different opportunities and events that show the children and the families in our community what the history of the sheriff's office looks like. So right now I think we have 9 or 10 horses, and they're quite popular, and it's a lot of fun, and I get to play cowboy once in a while, so I think that's pretty cool. One of the biggest accomplishments, in my opinion, and again, it's one that faced scrutiny but never really got the recognition it deserved. When legislation was going forward to create a piece of law that would say that we had to use other agencies to investigate any lethal force, use the lethal force taking the lives of community members, I said it's not enough. It needs to be anytime any law enforcement agency applies lethal force, whether someone dies or not, and there needs to be funding and training, and there needs to be a specific unit somewhere in the state that can be the experts in doing that. And I worked with my colleagues throughout the county, and we worked with legislators to pass one of the most proactive law enforcement legislative bills in the state's history. And it demands accountability and oversight and transparency whenever we use deadly force, not just take a life, but use deadly force. And that will be fully in effect next year, I believe, and the Department of Public Safety will be responsible for those investigations. But now we will not be investigating our own use of deadly force. So our agencies will do it to ensure that there is transparency and accountability. Consistent with other agencies, I created here the Hispanic, African American, LGBTQ plus advisory board to make sure that we hear the voices of those who oftentimes feel like they're unheard or have unique challenges or needs or feel oppressed or abused by law enforcement. So they had a seat at the table and they were stakeholders. And they played a big part in writing policies and giving feedback and holding us accountable, and I thank them because they came to the table with an open heart and an open mind and open dialogue. We built a community outreach unit that leads in educational academies, safety training, recruitment, resource allocation, student education engagements. If we're not meeting young adults in the community where they are and understanding their needs, we're not doing our job. And that's what we do exceptionally well. We partner with First Place to make sure that we had cross-training, meaning we meet with the autistic community and learn about the challenges they face and the dynamics of being someone who has a developmental disability. And they got a chance to learn about us so that they feel less stress and anxiety and challenges if they interact with someone who's in uniform. And it goes a long way not only in the community when our deputies are responding calls for service, but in our jail system. And with nearly 3,500 employees, the men and women in this organization have family members who also fall in that category, so they can be heard and they know we care about their family members. We work with the McCain Institute to address human trafficking in the jails and open doors of victims and close doors on perpetrators. We've had dozens of victims of human trafficking that have been in our jail system that we provide and connect them with the resources to help them. We have programs to reduce drug abuse and recidivism, and we've seen a considerable reduction in the recidivism of those who have had the positive impact of the program. You know what we did during COVID-19. We led the nation in the jail system here on how to manage an inmate population threatened by a pandemic to ensure that we could still incarcerate people who had to face consequences while doing everything to protect their health. And I can't tell you how proud I am of this organization and the men and women who took on all the new tasks and duties to get that done, to protect people in our custody while jeopardizing their own safety. And we lost men and women in this organization to COVID because of that same threat. The average pay increase for the organization across the board in the last 5 years and change has been over 30% for all the employees. My understanding is maybe the previous 8 to 10 years before that time, there were little or no raises. And if I remember correctly, there was a time when Tent City was supposed to be shut down before I took the office. And the Board of Supervisors put $3 million up and gave it to the administration, this is what I understand, and said, here, you can have this $3 million for raises for detention officers, or you can use it to keep Tent City open. And to the neglect and the insult to the detention officers in this organization, they used the money to keep Tent City open. So make no mistake about it, unequivocally, first and foremost, my commitment has been to give respect, gratitude, benefits, and appropriate pay to the men and women in this organization who do the job, not to make it about the sheriff who has the honor of speaking about those who do the job. And that, to me, is the most extreme example of then versus now. We have a wellness division to support our employees. And during COVID-19, we had a resource division that actually acquired things like baby formula and toilet paper for whatever reason became, difficult to come by. Whatever our employees needed, we try to bring it to them so they could come to work every day, not worry about their families. We increased minority hiring by about 8%. We built a more comprehensive, diverse cadet program that now serves the entire county, not just a portion of it. We have a behavioral health resource line for deputies to assist community members who are in distress. So when our deputies respond to calls for service, we're not trying to solve every problem. We're trying to get them connected with the resources that can solve their problem. Internally, we have a mentor program so that we can develop our employees and give them a chance of succession. We have a leadership academy. And at the end of the day, my slogan was better today, stronger tomorrow. We restored trust, confidence, and respect in the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office by promoting transparency and accountability and professionalism every day. And I preach to my employees, we will lead by example in every circumstance. Because everywhere we go, when you see someone in uniform, it's an opportunity to either show them all that's great about this profession or do the opposite. And we take pride in leading by example, and I'm grateful for that. And I like to think that that's been not just the walk, not just the talk, but the walk since I've taken this office. So I'll answer some questions, but I want to talk about one issue quickly. But again, I end with gratitude. I will leave here, I jokingly said, I want to be the quarterback who can't throw the football downfield but still wants to play the game. I want to be the quarterback who's throwing the ball downfield and winning games, but you leave on your terms because you left it better than you received it, and you want the next person up to do even better. I have some opportunities for me and my family that I'm excited about, but I will continue to work in the realm of serving this community in different capacities and being a person who tries to lead by example and give back. I have one concern that I want to talk about before I get to your questions, and it's this. The debt for this office from the previous administration that is known in the federal court orders and oversight has been paid with interest, tenfold. The men and women here, for the most part, across the board, and I say the most part because I'm sure there's one or two that are still left behind, had nothing to do, or at least whatever their role or responsibility was, it was because of circumstances, not because of their heart. What happened then doesn't happen now. The civil rights violations, the ordering, groups of deputies to go and round up people of color and violate their civil rights, ignoring internal affairs cases, it's a thing of the past. But what's not a thing of the past is the $250 million of taxpayer money that's still being spent because of oversight that, in my opinion, is overstayed. And it's sad to say this because I still am the named defendant in that case, at least for another 100 days or so. I was told numerous times by my attorneys, don't speak out against it because you're going to upset the court and they're going to punish you for it. Last time I checked, the First Amendment applies to me too. And the idea that I can't express as an elected sheriff who twice was a top vote getter in the community because this community entrusted me to run this office and believed in my integrity to make the change. The idea that I can't speak freely about something that I am sometimes offended by is offensive and wrong. we will be transparent and accountable no matter what. And there are elements of the court orders that were absolutely necessary and have improved this organization. But the idea that a leader of this office, this organization, who was not responsible for anything that preceded it, who's trying to straighten out this office and accomplish all the things you just saw with one hand tied behind my back. Can you imagine what we could have done if we'd gotten a little bit more freedom to do it the right way? Because it is absolutely true when I say the federal court oversight is more concerned about internal punishment than it is about external public safety. And that hurts the people of this community. When I have more people investigating internal affairs and compliance issues than I do crimes in our community, something's wrong. And you cannot have court orders that are solely focused on punishing an organization into oblivion and expect to make them better versus incentivizing them. I've met men and women who have made mistakes and paid it tenfold and proven their worth, and they can't be promoted because of something in their history from many, many years ago. And I'm not even given the latitude to make that decision. Because if I make the decision and the monitors who live in another state come to town and they say, we don't like that decision, then we're out of compliance. And when I say I want to divert a certain number of people into homicide or sex crimes or somewhere else, and they go, no, 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 no. We got a threshold on compliance and internal affairs. And even though that case that you're investigating internal affairs might be trivial, you're not going to move one body from there into another part of the organization to investigate a crime against a person, because if you do, we're going to financially punish taxpayers. So I'll go to your questions, but I will close with this. I leave with joy in my heart. I leave with opportunities in front of me. I'm not running from a fight because I never have and I never will. But I do recognize this. I'll be damned if I'll do 3 terms under federal court oversight for a debt I never incurred and not be given the chance to serve this community in the manner that I could if you take the other hand from being tied behind my back. Because the future without law enforcement doesn't look good. The future with good law enforcement means it will thrive here. So with that, I'm happy to answer your questions.
So, Sheriff, is this the reason why you will not stay until January 2025 then?
No. It was actually January 2024. I just see the opportunities in front of me that the timing of it makes the most sense for me and my family, and it would not be detrimental to the organization. It is one of the factors that I considered when I decided whether I wanted to pursue a 3rd term. But no, I won't leave something because of the negatives. I leave because I'm moving towards the positives. Do me a favor, there's a lot of folks in the room. I appreciate you being here. Let's, like we're in class, throw a hand up so I can make sure everybody gets a chance to speak. Go ahead, I'll come back to you in a second. Go ahead.
Sheriff, when did you make this decision? When did you know it was time?
I pondered it for a little while. You know, there's a part of me that, I don't want to say I would have regret, because I don't, but there's a part of me that feels this responsibility that in serving the public in this capacity is the greatest honor ever, and to walk away from it is not easy. But, you know, I live by this credo that there's a lot of ways that you can serve the public and do good things on behalf of the public, and it doesn't mean that you have to have a title attached to your name. I will leave the man I entered, and I will return to the name that I was born with.
Sheriff, once January comes by, what's going to happen then, and is there going to be a process for picking an interim leader for the office?
Yeah, the Board of Supervisors will be responsible for that process, so they can answer those questions.
All right, Sheriff, you talk about it better today, stronger tomorrow. What's the tomorrow for you when you're out of office? Is it you running for something else, or you're just going to chill and be a good citizen?
I don't think I would know how to chill. That's really nice to say. Oh, I'll do something that'll be pretty significant. I'll be excited about it. My family will embrace it, and we'll continue to lead by example. You got some over here next. Okay.
What kinds of internal affairs investigations that you are forced to do now are what you call trivial?
Well, I think there's a lot of investigations that could be resolved at a supervisory level that in every other profession, every other organization across the country, there are management issues that occur where they can be handled at the supervisory level, not go through internal affairs. So when I say trivial, I appreciate you pointing that word. That doesn't mean that if we do something that is in violation of policy or in some way violates who we are as an organization, that it should be ignored or diminished. But there's a reason that you have supervisors, a reason that you have a management structure, and that's to address issues. And if every violation needs to go through internal affairs and take months to resolve and sets employees into a space where they can't move forward with their career, then that is far too punitive. That's more than a pound of flesh. That's a lot.
I think I heard you say, give us two examples of,
I'm going to go on this and I'll come back to you.
Politics?
Oh, I don't, I take it a day at a time.
Are you afraid that maybe the progress that you've made so far could be taken back by somebody coming in with a different ideology?
Am I afraid that what I've done will be undone? I hope not. I don't like to live in fear. I would hope that, I guess the most important thing is we're a nation where politics has become too prevalent, and a lot of decisions are predicated off of political ideologies. And there's no place for that in law enforcement, period. So if someone were to come in this office and think that it's about them or it's about politics, and they don't deserve to wear this badge. But hopefully the next man or woman up will thrive. We'll build on what we've done here. But I put it on the community. It's your responsibility to choose the man or woman who is most deserving of this office. And I would hope that you're deserving of that right person too. Go ahead. I'll make another lap by.
What's that?
I'll just keep running around in circles till I get tired of you guys.
Thank you. So you listed your whole list of 10-year achievements. Those are great things to talk about in 6.5 years. From what you've said, it seems you wished you could have done more if you had not had one hand tied behind your back. But let's focus on the next few weeks, few months, if you will. What's the one thing you want to work on right now as the top law enforcement person with this agency and your people?
Oh, I met with my executive team a little while ago. I try to keep this as close to the vest as possible. I think the next 90 to 100 days just to appreciate them, to make sure that they understand that they are the leaders of this organization, not me, and to make sure I create a pathway so that they can continue to thrive. And if the Board of Supervisors allows me the opportunity to have input on whoever they choose to hold the office for that last year, I'd like for my voice to be heard for their sake. You know, they have put their trust in me. They have sacrificed beyond, anything I put on that board. And they deserve to be respected, which means that whoever is selected should be someone that respects and appreciates the work that they've done to bring us to where we are now. So that's where my focus will be.
In terms of a choice, will that person have to be a Democrat as well?
And, again, I don't know the rules of that. That'd be the Board of Supervisors going to answer to it. Yeah. Which is such I get it, but it's funny because it goes against what I said earlier. It's a shame that politics has any place in this profession, because it does.
In the last 2 terms, you mentioned all the wins that you, as a leader of this office, had. Is there something that you regret?
That I regret?
Yeah.
Maybe the hair loss that I couldn't prevent, or the wrinkles on my face. I wish I could have done something about that. No, I have men and women who died in the line of duty. Jim Lee, Johnny Ruiz, and I apologize, I can't do the whole list of folks who have, but I didn't ever expect I'd hand as many flags as I handed to family members who lost loved ones to the sacrifice of this job. But that might be the most important thing I could ever do, is make sure that they're respected and they know that the sacrifice was not in vain and that they're appreciated for it. And again, I know some families out there, I apologize, I'm not going through the litany of all those who did die in the line of duty, but you don't ever want to see somebody lost in a profession where you're responsible for the safety not only of the community but of the men and women in the organization. So I'll probably take that with me, and that'll be the part that would be reflectively heartbreaking. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful that men and women still choose this profession and run towards bullets when others run away. I was just, like I said, in Santa Fe talking to some folks, and we were talking about a lot of different political issues. When I say political unrest that leads to potential violence, that are for law enforcement to be engaged. And I heard some scrutiny, and I understand that we should be the recipients of scrutiny when we mess up, when we need to fess up. But we are not victims. We are sure as heck not villains. These are men and women who will put their lives in harm's way for complete strangers every day of the week. And amongst our ranks, there are some who don't deserve to wear the badge, and we got to root them out. But we have to get back to a place where we have gratitude for order in our community and recognize where order comes from. So I don't call it regret. I told you, what, what would be heartbreaking for me. But when I ran because I wanted our sons to look at law enforcement with gratitude and respect the profession. And I hope that for the next generation. If I've fallen short there, that would have been the one accomplishment that I would have liked to have put more effort into if I haven't put enough.
What's one more element of the Melendrez order that you feel is unfair, out of reach?
Oh, the orders are so comprehensive, I couldn't pick out one. I think it's just more so the idea that, on a personal note, I grew up in New Jersey till I was a young man and approaching junior high, so I'm long in the tooth. I've been here much longer than where I grew up, so this is my home. Everything that I know, everything that I have is rooted in Arizona. I spent nearly 30 years or so in public safety, and my reputation, I would like to think, speaks for itself as a man of integrity who is committed to public safety. The idea that monitors who have never been vetted, to my knowledge, in some way, that suddenly their integrity is greater than mine or their work skill is more impressive than mine, have more say-so over who I pick in this organization for certain jobs, and then I am judged on the outcome of the people that I don't even have final say to pick. It's wrong. It may be the authority of the court, and in its way, it may be justice. That doesn't make it just. The most recent decision where suddenly civilian investigators and professional standards, where I have to keep a minimum threshold, I don't have the final say on who those investigators will be. A guy who sits in North Carolina hasn't been here in 3 years, his team does. But I'm the one responsible for the work that they do and the outcomes they produce, because if they don't produce a certain outcome, then this county and this community pays more taxpayer dollars. You want to judge me on the outcomes, but you don't want to give me the chance to call the plays or to put the players on the field.
What's your advice to your successor when you wrap up?
My advice to my successor? Stay the course, you know. In some ways, I told the men and women in this organization, if not you, then who? And I know they're probably looking at me like, well, where are you going, Sheriff? I'm not running away from it. Like I said, in my heart, my soul, my blood, sweat, and tears is in this organization, but it is time for me to move on. But my advice is, no matter what the obstacle, no matter what the challenge, no matter what the criticism, men and women in this community and their families are dependent on you, stay the course. Take one or two more, and then I'm going to go spend some time with my staff who are more deserving of my time than you guys are. No disrespect intended.
I'll take one more question, Sheriff. So, in a manner of self-assessment, none of us are perfect. All of us could improve no matter what we do. When we judge Patches, it's 1 to 10. You don't. What would you give yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, and where do you think you could have improved as this year?
I'm going to compare that to a question I get when I'm out in the community. People go, hey, Sheriff, how are things going? And I say, it doesn't matter how I think things are going. It matters how you think things are going. So for me to rate myself, I think would be narcissistic. You can tell me how you feel about the work that I've done, and that's all that matters, because I'm serving you. But I will tell you this, and I live by my faith. And in the Bible it says you should not worry about winning the approval of people. You should worry about pleasing your Lord. And that's how I go about every day. Anybody else? Last questions, last chance?
And I think I'd like just a little bit more clarity, but I think we already have it here. You don't want to stick around until the election is over. So I interpret that to mean that it's just gotten too intolerable that you will not stay on for another 15 months.
Well, that's your interpretation, which I would disagree with completely. Opportunities that present themselves for me come in time frames. So I have to make a difficult decision to determine if leaving at the time that I leave is not going to be detrimental to this organization, but it's going to be opportunistic for me and my family. I've done the work. I've been in this profession for 30 years. I recognize that elected terms come with terms, but I also recognize that I have to make the decision that I believe is best for myself, my family, and this organization. And I have the utmost confidence that these men and women in the back of the room will just keep doing the business as usual, which is exceptional. And they will serve this community, and who knows, maybe the day after I leave, you all forget my name, and I'll be okay with that. So I appreciate you guys. Greatest honor ever. Thankful to my wife and our boys for letting me play sheriff, dress up as sheriff. And for those of you who want to cast criticisms, feel free, but know at the end of the day, it's a heck of a job. It's a tough job, and I'm proud of what's going on in the last 6 years, 7 years, and that's mine to keep. God bless.